Welcome to the Pitwall Panic Podcast. Today it is just me, Kyle. Daniel was not able to make it tonight. He had some stuff going on with his family, so hoping he has a fun time tonight. That he is doing. Um, Tonight will be very, I feel like, interesting conversation that many people, if they aren't talking about it, are probably lying because it has been the hot topic for the season, but there's supposed to be some new stuff involved. So we're going to talk about it and give our opinions on what's going on, what's being stated, and go from there. But we're also going to talk about some of the news that's come out, and more than just for F1. This week in racing has been kind of a sad week in racing, and we'll get more into that a little bit. But first and foremost, if you haven't followed us on Twitch, if you haven't followed us on TikTok, please do so. We are trying to grow. It's a slow but steady process. If you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, would also love that. Please hop on over there and show the love and support. We will be greatly appreciative of that. So we're gonna go ahead and get into this week's episode. This week, starting off with the news, we're gonna kind of talk about Ferrari. There's been statements that upgrades being made are going to be coming in from Ferrari, Red Bull, I believe McLaren, and there's talks about Cadillac and possibly Mercedes all bringing upgrades to Miami. I'm kind of surprised you're not seeing more. I'm sure Aston Martin's also going to be bringing some. They're trying to figure out how to make the vibrations at least drivable. But they may have been left off the list just because they're kind of expected to have happen at this point. Who knows? So let's get into Ferraris. And I say Ferraris because so far they're the only ones that I've seen that came out talking about the upgrades they were bringing. Let me try to adjust this light so it's less bad. There we go. A little bit less bright. Ferrari said they're going to do, if you follow us on TikTok, I did make a post about this, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more and more in depth. So Ferraris came out and said their upgrade package is a package and a half. And there's reports that it's like a 50% upgrade to the car. That is a lot. Anybody who's been watching F1 long enough knows that just because it's an upgrade does not mean the car will be better. There's many times that people do upgrades and it backfires drastically, and they end up either taking the upgrade off or trying to fix what it messes up. The name of the game in F1 is a balance in the car. I mean, there's other issues also, but if you have no balance, it doesn't matter what you bring to the upgrades because you're just making the balance worse, which makes the car basically undrivable. And I think a good point of that is potentially Red Bull right now. There's arguments that Red Bull's power unit is one of the best on the grid, if not the best. But the chassis is so unbalanced and so bad, the car is virtually undrivable. And look at where they are. So doing that many upgrades at one time, it's a feast or famine moment. Either this car is going to be really taking it to Mercedes, or they're really going to hurt this car. There's not going to be an in between. They're just doing too much to the car. So what are they doing? They're doing a bunch of aerodynamic upgrades where they are doing upgrades to the wings and the floor. So I'm not 100% on the specifics on the floor, and I'm sure they're not just, I mean, teams aren't going to release 100% specifics on what they're doing. They have said that the Macarena wing or the flip wing should be coming to Miami, and that we should be seeing that like on the car in the race now. We saw it make a appearance, I believe, at what race was at China. We saw it at China in practice, and we didn't see it in the race. We didn't see it in qualifying. People ask, well, why not? Well, it turned out that Ferrari was not comfortable with the reliability of it yet and didn't want to have any issues, so they just didn't put it in yet. We were supposed to see it at least in free practice 1 in Japan. I don't recall seeing it there, so I don't know what happened with that. But they've had 5 weeks now, so should the reliability be fixed? I would assume and hope so. If it is fixed, there's conversations that this should bring like 8 to 10 kilometers an hour more for them in the straights, and that's really what's been hurting them is the straights. So does this allow them to take the fight to Mercedes? I don't know. I hope so. As a Ferrari fan, I really, really hope so. But I don't know. Only time will tell. Now, the other thing that they've done, which is really interesting to me, is they've done weight reduction. The reason that is interesting to me is there's only like a handful of cars already underweight. Ferrari is one of them, and they're already reducing weight. It's just interesting to me that they're trying to reduce weight instead of focusing on other aspects to get more power, because you have a minimum weight requirement that your car has to be. So if you're underweight and you're shedding more weight, that just means you have to add more weight ballast to the car to be at weight. Like I understand in theory, the lighter the car, the faster the car. I understand that theory. But when you have a minimum weight requirement, I just feel like you could be putting time elsewhere. And like an example of why that's a problem, you look at, was it not last year, 2 years ago, George won, I think, Singapore, and then got DQ'd because he was underweight. But I mean, that's a real possibility when you start trying to lose weight in the car like Ferrari has. So let's hope this doesn't bite them in the butt. Then the other big change that they've done is they've done a software upgrade to the power unit. So they cannot change the components of the power unit yet, but they can change the software. Now, will that software make that big of a difference? I don't know. I don't know enough about the software side of stuff to really give an opinion on that. I know that the software issues, the reason why they had power unit issues at McLaren was due to software issues. So obviously it makes a big difference. What that difference is, I don't really know. So it'll be interesting to see if it gives any boost in power to help them again fight with Mercedes, because that's been the name of the game, is who can beat Mercedes so far. That being said, in Japan, Charles and Oscar both beat George. So I mean, they are not unbeatable. It is very obvious they are not unbeatable. Stuff can happen. I just don't know if this is what's going to be able to take the fight regularly to Mercedes. I hope it is. But I don't know if I'm sold on that yet. I think when we finally have the AUDO kick in, that's when we'll really see the benefits for Ferrari. Now the question is, there's rumors going around that Red Bull may actually have the strongest power unit. And if that's the case, by how much? Because if that's true and Mercedes is within that 2% of having a weaker power unit, that gives them the ability to upgrade the engine, which could cause problems. That being said, they will also have to get that compression ratio 100% into 16.1 if the rumors are true that they are getting to 18.1 at race temperature. So I don't know. It may balance out. That being said, we're going to kind of move forward now and talk about Mercedes and McLaren both did a tire test at the Nürburgring. Pirelli also did a tire test with Lewis Hamilton in wet conditions. I don't have too much information on that, so we're not really going to go into detail on that. The big news, though, I mean, I know, okay, let me say this. I think it was just a run of the mill standard. Nothing special happened at this test. Because the only news that I have found is that Lewis did indeed do a test. That's all I know. But this test was rather interesting. Mercedes got 172 laps in, which, is kind of expected. And McLaren got 65 in. Now, this is problematic because they were having technical issues. If you don't know, and you haven't seen my TikTok breaking this down, these tire tests, they run very similar to like preseason testing, to where you have a morning session and an afternoon session, and you have a lunch break in the middle. Well, Oscar went out in his McLaren and ran all morning. Came back from lunch and was having technical issues that prevented him from running most of the afternoon and only ran towards the end. So we're seeing more reliability issues with this car. We know that in China, both cars DNS'd. We know that Lando is on his last battery unit, that he is allotted for the season. So if he takes any more, then there's going to be penalties involved. I want to say I saw somewhere that Oscar is as well. Do not quote me on that because I'm not 100%. And there's a couple other drivers on the grid that are on their third battery unit. So that's problematic, but it's even bigger for McLaren that if you're having these issues and you're having other technical issues, how long can they keep Haas off of them? I think it's saving grace that Behrman had the accident that he had at Japan. I really wish he hadn't, but I think it helps McLaren because if Oscar was if Ocon was in the points, there's no reason that we should think that Behrman would not have worked his way into the points. Because unless you're just an Ocon fan in complete denial, nobody can say that Ocon is a better driver than Behrman under any circumstances. So could we end up seeing Haas fighting for third place in constructors? If McLaren ends up having the technical issues and say it takes out both Lando and Oscar again, we see Behrman go in Miami and put up a fifth or sixth place finish, and you see Ocon squeak into the points, we really have a fight on our hands. And I think, obviously, Haas will still be a few points back, considering Oscar did get that podium the last race. But it really makes that question of can Haas end up in third place in the constructors a much more viable argument to have, because there's a real possibility just simply due to the lack of reliability in this McLaren. If you're a McLaren fan, you really need to be worried. Simply put. Because they cannot figure out how to make this car reliable. Real quick, I'm going to try to look up what technical issues they were having at the Nürburgring. I don't know that they'd be out because you don't want your competitors knowing what issues you're having. Let's see. It just says undisclosed technical issues, and that kept the car in the garage from lunch till nearly the end of the session. This followed separate electrical issues. Okay, that's the same one. Separate electrical issues in the Mercedes power unit in the previous Chinese Grand Prix. So the question becomes, are they having more issues with the power unit? Or is it something else? If it's the power unit, that's kind of bothersome. because what do you do? Obviously, they don't develop their own power units, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to fix, I feel like, if there's a bigger issue involved. But then at the same time, why is Mercedes not having the same issue? Um, if it's another issue, at what point do you just go, I can't catch a break? Because it's issue after issue after issue. I know it's the beginning of a regulation, and if you're going to have issues, it's going to happen in the beginning of a regulation. But it's kind of just seeming like the car is made of glass, and it's constantly crumbling right now. I just really hope that. I hope for Oscar's sake they figure out this car. I don't think this car is good for Lando. We have seen that in the way the racing has gone and not too great in his favor. But the only race that Oscar has run, he looked really good in it. I don't know that he would have won that race without the safety car. I still think it was Kimi's race to lose. He just had so much pace. But he had a decent shot at it. He had a much better shot than George did, in my opinion. Who knows? That's a if this doesn't happen. Well, you know what Max said about his ifs. So now let's kind of go forward a little bit further. I saw again today. I was scrolling Twitter, scrolling some different outlets, trying to make sure there's no new news going on before the podcast. And it was talking about Laurent Mekies, the team principal for Red Bull, stated it's fair to say that Yuki has shown significant speed before, and we hope another opportunity will present itself. Laurent Mekies helped and supported Yuki to the ultimate ends at VCARB. When he got to Red Bull, I believe that it's because of Laurent Mekies that Yuki even had a roundabout decent car, even though it was bad in the first place, because he wasn't getting the upgrades that Max was getting while Christian Horner was there. That being said, Laurent Mekies apparently did not really fight that hard to give Yuki another chance in this car for 2026. I feel like they should have really given him 2026 as an opportunity to see what he can do in a new car that wasn't built specifically for Max. I mean, this car is too, I think, to a degree, but you haven't had time to develop it that deeply yet. And just see what he does. I mean, what do you have to lose, really? It's easier to say that, I think, now because of hindsight. Because where's Red Bull at now? And it's easy to say, well, you don't have anything to lose. You're not really getting points anyways. You're barely getting points out of Max. But I don't think it would have hurt to have him in that second seat, at least until the halfway point of the season. I mean, they did put Liam Lawson in the car for 2 races last season, so if he was that bad, they could have done that again. But it's just crazy to me that you're going to sit here and say, he's shown significant speed before. And we hope he gets an opportunity, just not with us. At what point do you just let him go drive for another team? You're hoping he gets another opportunity, but then it comes out that before they got Ocon, Haas was going for Yuki, and Helmut Marko blocked it. He was still under contract, so Red Bull had to agree to let his contract be bought out, and Helmut Marko stopped it. So yeah, they want to let him drive somewhere else so badly that they didn't allow it. It's really frustrating. I am a big supporter of Yuki. I know there's a lot of Yuki hate out there, and for those haters that want to hate on Yuki, it's so forced. Name one teammate other than Max Verstappen who is a 4-time champion and has never been really beaten by a teammate who has beat Yuki. He has only lost to Max. But we want to say, well, Yuki's not that good. He was in the V carb for the most part of his career, or the AlphaTauri, or whatever they named it at that moment, because the team's name has changed like 4 times. And I would argue that if he had been in that V carb last season, he would have multiple podiums because it was better than the Red Bull. And I question if Laurent Mekies also has that same thought process if you're making comments like that. So that being said, going even further, if you're Ocon, should you be worried? If Yuki Tsunoda was their first pick, but he was still under contract, his contract comes up this year, and Haas has said they are not happy with your performance. You're barely getting any points if you do, and that's continued this season. Out of 3 races, 4 if you count a sprint, he has 1 point. And that's coming into a season where the first 3 races, you've had like 12 DNFs total combined. You had like 6 in the first race, and it's probably more than 12. I'd have to go look. You had like 6 in the first race, and like 5, 6, maybe 7 in the second race. You have all these DNFs, and you still can't score points. If they're saying they're not happy with your performance last season where everybody was staying in the race, how are they going to feel now? And I know there's a lot of people that disagree and do not like my take on this. That Ocon is a better driver than I'm giving him credit for. And that I've been argued that there's more to driving than just scoring points because he's a good developmental driver on helping give feedback on the car. And that he can help the rookies learn how to deal with PR training and everything else. He can do that as a reserve also. He doesn't have to have a main seat to do all this stuff. That is the biggest cope I think I have heard all season. He can do all of that and let a faster driver be in the seat beside Behrman. And if they have a faster driver in that second seat, what's the odds they're in third place right now? And people want to say, well, Yuki's not better than Ocon. You are out of your mind if you genuinely believe that. And I don't think... Hold on. Sorry about that. We're back now, I believe. So what I was saying is, to back it up a second, before the issues with whatever just happened with OBS, people are saying that Ocon can help him become a better driver because he can give better feedback on the car, and that Ocon, he can help Behrman learn how to navigate not having great feelings and still being able to drive and how to deal with this when the car's not going the way you want it to. He can do all that as a reserve. I'm sorry. He does not need a main seat to do that. And if you put a better driver like Yuki in that seat, and you have 2 good drivers, what's the odds that Haas is already fighting for third instead of being in no man's land in 4th right now? I mean, they're comfortably, I believe, ahead of 5th. I'd have to go double check, but I'm pretty sure. But they're like 20 points out of 3rd right now. And it's all because Ocon really can't get in the points. He's got 1 point out of 4 races this season, counting that sprint in China. And hasn't really shown like, oh, he's really got to be in the points. He's just barely missing it. No, that's not the case. I would be very, very worried if I was Ocon right now. And if we are very honest with ourselves, I think anybody sees that and agrees with that. Simply knowing that the only reason Yuki didn't get the seat in the first place is because Helmut Marko blocked it. Now continuing, looking at Dorian Penn. Dorian Penn got her first shot at driving in an F1 car, which I think is awesome. That I think brings the sport one step closer to having women in the sport. But I just don't want to see a Danica Patrick situation to where we just want to have a woman in the sport, so let's put her in a seat, and then she falls on her face because she's really not ready or she's just not talented enough for it. Not saying she's not before anybody comes after me. I don't want them to force the situation and then it sets back the potential of a female in F1 because we're just trying to force a situation. Do I think there are some women on the planet that could race in F1? Probably. Do I think every F1 Academy driver should get a spot in F1? No. I don't think that's practical. That's just how it is. I mean, how many drivers are there in F4, which is essentially what the F1 Academy is? And how many of them make it to F1? Because then they have to funnel into F3 and then F2 and then F1. So, I mean, I hope it works out for her, but let's just not force the situation and do more damage than possible good to allow female drivers in F1. And then kind of getting into the sad news for the week. I'm trying to think. I do not know how to pronounce this man's name. Yua Miettinen, I think is how you pronounce it. He's Finnish, so and I am sorry for butchering that name because I'm sure I did. He was in an accident at the Nürburgring in an endurance race, and at 66 years old has passed away due to this accident. It is a sad time in endurance racing, and condolences to his family and his friends. I wish the best for them, and I wish that it hadn't have happened. I know many people will also say that, you know what you're signing up for when you get in that car. You know the issues that could arise, but nobody wants to see that happen. So condolences to his family. Even bigger condolences to, not bigger. Let me rephrase that. That sounds bad. Condolences also to the spectator who was killed in the rally race. There was an accident in Italy. A driver hit, I don't want to say a dune, but they hit a rise on the side of the track. It threw the car sideways. The car flew off track. You know, in rally racing, there are no walls in rally racing, and the spectators lined the track. Well, the car struck at least one spectator, possibly more. And one spectator was killed, and I believe 2 others were injured. And it's a sad day in racing because there's so much death going on this week in racing. Again, this it's nothing new to the sport, but it is always sad to see this happen. And I just hope the best for the friends and family members to these people and to the specific driver and the spectators. This is going to be something that, changes their life forever. So getting back into, I guess, better spirits, we're going to get into about the regulations that are going on. So this has been the big talk, and there's big question marks going into Miami about it. So first, let's talk about the major controversy, I guess. Is it the regulation put a 50-50 split on combustion and electric engine? And a lot of people are calling this artificial racing. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. And the reason I say that is you look at these battles between Charles and Lewis, and yes, they're in the same car, but like Charles doesn't have the ability to have that 1 second gap to burn more energy that Lewis does, and they're able to fight the way they have. There's some real racing going on. Plus, you have to have the strategy that goes into deploying and when to harvest and whatnot. I understand that it's boosting enough, and then when you're trying to harvest enough, it does make a big enough difference. I do understand that. think that it's also blown out of proportion a little bit. And I do think that I'm trying to think of how to put this. I do think there are some dangers in the safety that we are seeing due to the closing speeds that we've seen, specifically the stuff with Ollie Bearman. But I do think that it is a little blown out of proportion. If you think about me and Daniel were talking about this off the podcast one time, just me and him chit chatting. When we did the episode last week talking about our favorite historic races, we were talking about what do we think drivers from the 80s would have thought of the last regulation. And a lot of people liked the last regulation. What would they think about this regulation? They would have hated both regulations. Let's just be honest, they would have. Every regulation comes with its challenges, and every regulation has things that people don't like about it. Do I think the 50-50 split was a mistake? Yes. Do I think people are overcritical of it? Also, yes, because that's what people do. So we'll see what happens. I think we talked about last week, there's a talk of the split going back to 70-30, or it was either 70-30 or 75-25. And I think that is the move. If we have to have any electrical, it needs to be a minimal split, because this is F1, not Formula E. So I do think that we will have a split still. I just think that it needs to be minimal. And not this 50-50 crap. Now, let's go even further into the regulations and side effects of this regulation. Due to the regulations, Max has been saying he's thinking more and more about retiring. He's calling this Mario Kart rather than real racing and not really enjoying it. Many people know that I am very, very mixed on emotions, specifically about Max saying that he wants to retire. I know that F1 has a bunch of complaints on a regular basis, and that is fine. Everybody has the right to complain. Everybody has the right to retire when they choose to retire. My thing is, it's almost like Max is throwing a temper tantrum of, I don't like this. I'm bigger than the sport, so if I say I'm going to retire, they're going to change it to go my way. And that's just simply not how it should be. Now, George made a comment this week. And keep in mind, I am by far not a George supporter. If anything, I'm a George hater, and I have been for many, many years. I think he's a punk and a crybaby. I've said that multiple times. I do agree with this statement. I also believe that he can be very passive aggressive at times, and that he'll say stuff just to take shots at people. He's done it at Max multiple times. But I think this kind of hits the nail. He said that F1 is bigger than any driver. True. And that in 2022, he didn't like the car or the regulations and complained about the porpoising. But Max wasn't complaining because he was winning. Facts. I think he had some complaints, but it was never to the degree that he has now. Because he was winning. Why would he complain? And then he goes on to say that now Max is complaining, but his complaints are much different than Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren, simply because the front teams are at the front of the grid, and he is struggling to be anywhere in the points at this point. He said that no one wants to lose Max because they enjoy racing with him, but he's already achieved what all other drivers want. So now it's just for the joy of racing, what puts a smile on his face. So he kind of understands at the same time if Max does retire. So it's you're only complaining when you're losing. It's kind of one of those things that I took from that. But at the same time, understanding, because he's not going to be in that fight this year. He might not even be in the fight next year. For all we know, they might not be in the fight this entire regulation. Because Red Bull has looked really bad. Who knows? Well, I mean, only time will really tell. But Max is, in my opinion, throwing a tantrum. And I feel like if they cave to it, and it's specifically because of Max, you set a precedent that is very dangerous and very bad for the sport. Because then you set this precedent that if you're good enough, you can complain and get your way. And then that's a whole other issue in itself. I do understand if you're not enjoying it, I'm just gonna quit. Because he doesn't need the money. He's got 4 titles. He's got multiple records. Like, he doesn't need to be there. It's just interesting to think about. Now then, so what regulations are being worked on to adjust? Where did my mouse go? There we go. So they're talking about increasing super clipping. Now, what is this super clipping everything's been talking about, and what does it matter? So from what I gathered in my little bit of research for this and trying to understand, is that by increasing the super clipping, it increases the energy harvesting during full throttle from 250 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, reducing the need for lifting. Now, why is that a big deal? It's a big safety thing. I mean, you look at the stuff going on with Franco Colapinto, he was harvesting. So while he was harvesting, was he lifting and coasting going into Spoon? Was that also part of why Oliver Bearman flew up so fast on him and the closing speed? Like, it's a big deal if you're able to charge that much extra. I mean, that's 100 kilowatts extra. It reduces, they're looking at reducing recharge limits. So basically, it's allowing for the potential maximum recharge per lap to be higher. Which then reduces the need for lift and coast and whatnot. They're looking at potentially reducing the energy management needed by modifying the MGUK settings to reduce extreme reliance on harvesting. Because right now, if you have no battery, you have no fight. So you have to harvest the battery. Or you're just really up a creek without a paddle. So they're trying to fix this. And by doing all this, they're hoping to bring adjustments to safety, which their goal is not necessarily at this point to say, oh, we're getting rid of this quote unquote artificial racing and to make it safer, because it could have gone way different if Oliver Bearman had, let's say, rear-ended Franco Colapinto. Like, we could have seen some real injuries. I mean, Bearman walked out of that without a serious injury, but an injury nonetheless. I think it was a bone bruise, but still, it shouldn't have happened at all. So what else do we know? There's reports coming out, and this part's a little frustrating, I feel like, saying that it is increasingly likely that the FIA could wait to put these changes in as late as Barcelona. So we could see differences as late as Barcelona, which is, I think, like 4 races away. I'd have to pull up a calendar, but I'm pretty sure it's like 4 races away, because I got Miami next, and then Canada, and then Monaco, and then it's Barcelona. So I don't know. If it's that big of a deal, I don't know why we're waiting 4 races. Now, the team bosses and team principals, whatever you want to call them, are supposed to be voting on this rule modification proposal Monday. So tomorrow, from my understanding. And here's the thing about it. The FIA can propose rule changes all they want. If the team principals don't vote it in, it doesn't matter. So I know everybody's been like badgering the FIA for lack of better words, but it's more than just them that have to agree to this. For a modification to the rules to happen, especially this drastically, all the teams have to agree to it. So let's keep that in mind. Now, last week, the FIA single seater director Nicholas Tambaz. I am terrible with names. Tambazis, I think it's, or Tambazis, I think it's how you pronounce it, suggested that one outcome could be a two-stage implementation process for rolling out these new, FIA regulation changes. Now, he made the comment, we may decide that we want to have a phase 1 and a phase 2, maybe give phase 2 a bit more time for some tweaks to be done by the manufacturers, which goes back to all these teams have to agree to it. If they don't feel like it's going to, yes, they want to be safe, but at the same time, they want to win races. If they do not feel like they can take a race with these changes, they're going to fight it. I'm not going to, you can almost argue it's safety, but you look at the the start situation. Everybody else is saying we need to add a longer, basically build for the turbo on launch, and Ferrari saying, well, we made this argument last year and they told us build a car around it. It's not fair to punish us now because we built our car spec for this and these teams haven't. So why? And we're seeing a lot of pushback there. That could happen here. I don't know that it will, but we could see something similar happen there. Then, VCARB's team principal, Alan Permain, is also suggesting that the two-phase may be a more sensible route. It would stretch things out over a longer period, specifically because of the way the calendar is. When we look at the next two races, we have Miami and Montreal, both featuring sprints. Now, what's the big deal about that? You get less practice time. Without practice time, you don't have a way to see how the changes to these regulations are impacting the car outside of race time, so you can't adjust things, and they feel like that puts them at a disadvantage. My logic is everybody's dealing with the same situation, so if you make a regulation that changes everybody's car, then everybody's dealing with it. Same conditions. It's not like half the grid is changing and half the grid is staying the same. So to me, that argument is stupid. But he said in the article that I read, I think we will have a particularly tough time going to Miami with it being a sprint because there's a really little time to test anything. So it may well be that we try some of the ones that are, let's say, a little bit simpler and less risky in Miami, and then we try some more in Montreal. Then we go to Monaco, where it's almost impossible to test anything. So Barcelona might be the first time we try some of the more challenging ones. I wouldn't say it's necessarily 2 upgrades. I would say we need to keep an open mind, keep open-minded, and maybe this is a continuous thing. Now, I do agree that it should be possibly a continuous thing because when you're tweaking stuff, you don't know how each tweak is going to affect the car. You don't know if I tweak this, do I need to tweak this in response to that? Like, there's a lot that when you start tweaking one thing, it adjusts others. So I agree that it should be a continuous thing. I don't know how much I care for we need to do little stuff because we have a sprint. Unless your concern is, well, we're going to have too much speed and this is going to cause a safety issue or something along those lines, I don't see why it matters because everybody is dealing with the same conditions and the same changes. But to me, that's a very easy cop-out to, I don't want to change this. because we're having a decent time right now. And so let's just do little by little so that it affects us less and less. I do understand saying that Monaco is not the best time to be testing new things because Monaco is a difficult track in the first place, much less when you're trying new things. Who knows, though? They could continue there. And then them saying Barcelona may be the first time we have a chance for really challenging changes because there's no sprint, so you have 3 practice sessions. I disagree with that, and that's just a cop-out to say I don't want to do this. I could be wrong, and they could be all for it, but it just doesn't make sense to me on why are we so worried about, well, there's a sprint. It's not half the grid has a sprint and half the grid has free practice for 3 sessions. Everybody's dealing with the same thing. It's like saying we need to postpone a race because it's raining and that's not convenient for me. Everybody's racing in the rain. Get over it. Suck it up, Buttercup. This is your job. They pay you to do this. Figure it out. And I don't understand why it's that complicated. If we are worried about somebody dying because you end up having closing speeds like Oliver Bearman had at Japan, what happens when you're at Monaco and you're coming out of the tunnel and you have that quick chicane and you have those same closing speeds and you sling it directly into a wall with no time to slow down? At best, somebody's going to be hurt, if not killed. But let's worry about the fact that there's no free practice for us to test this stuff in. It's just a sprint and a race. What is more important, making sure somebody doesn't die or making sure you have time to test that your car is going to be optimal in these new changes? Like, am I missing something here? Or are we really just that not worried about it? And it's not like it's well, we've had 25 races in these conditions and then we just had this one mistake happen. We've had 3 races and then Japan, and that's counting a sprint. We haven't even had a full season and we almost had somebody really get hurt. But let's slow down the process of making changes that could potentially save somebody's life. That makes a whole lot of sense, right? Absolutely not. And I don't understand the rationale that goes behind this. And if he is saying that, what is Ferrari going to say? What is Red Bull going to say? What is McLaren going to say? What is Mercedes going to say? And like we said earlier, these teams all have to vote on this. So if majority vote says, no, we're not going to do it this way, then it's not going to happen. And if a small team that's not winning, like VCarb is saying this, you know that McLaren, McLaren, because Red Bull's probably going to want to change whatever they can to help them. But you know that Mercedes isn't going to want to change. McLaren's not going to want to change. Ferrari's not going to want to change. Now, I will say, the Haas being in the top 4, being a winning team, does help skew it a little bit because they're going to want to change it because they almost just lost a driver because of it. Alpine, who's in 5th, might also want to change it because it could have gone really bad if Oliver Bearman couldn't have got out of the way and rear-ended Franco Colapinto. So there's a little bit of hope there, but we have to worry about what other smaller teams like VCarb are going to vote to take it slower, just whatever it may be. It really concerns me. Only time will tell, though. It's just one of those things you hope that they come to their senses and that they don't do the stupid thing because I'm more worried about, well, I can't test to make my car optimal. Again, I understand it at Monaco, not wanting to test new things because it's already hard enough to drive Monaco as it is while you're not testing something new. But you have to have some kind of changes to these regulations so that we don't have an Oliver Bearman incident happen at Monaco. At least with Miami, there's quite a few places you can run off. Same thing with Canada, sort of. Like you can sling it through a corner, cut a corner. You can't cut a corner at Monaco. There's just wall. There is no grass to slow you down. Like, at least if this happens at the hairpin in Canada, you can just shoot straight ahead and there's time to slow down. There's nowhere at Monaco. There's a couple little runoffs. But even then, are you going to have time to slow down with the paces that if you're equivalent to what Behrman had closing in on Franco Colapinto? I just think this is a dangerous game at this point. And I know I'm beating that dead horse, but I just do not want to see somebody end up dead because we're more worried about, well, I don't have time to optimize the car. Because it's not saying, let's do the safer ones now and worry about the bigger, or the other ones later. It's, let's do less risky changes in Miami. Well, what's risky? What's risky is not changing anything at this point. I just don't understand. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out for the night. This is what I had for you. I don't know if Daniel will be back next week. I got to talk with him still. Hopefully he will. But if not, you will still see my lovely face next week. Again, if you haven't yet, follow us on Twitch. Give us a follow on TikTok. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're on the Twitch, you can hit the Discord hyperlink down at the bottom, and it'll take you to the Discord server. If you're on YouTube, it's hyperlinked in the channel so that you can come and join us. And we are gladly every day having conversations about this kind of stuff. We talk about episodes, and people get my opinions when they ask certain questions about things that I've said. We just try to have a fun time in there. So come join the Discord. Have a good time with us. I will see y'all next week. And we will see about how creative we can get next week. But then after that, we got Miami. So hopefully that'll be a good time. Thank you all for